Alright, welcome back, baseball fans, to the final elimination video of these elimination of the season. And it's the happiest one, because it's the only team that finished the season the way they wanted it to. It's the world champion New York Mets. Interesting thing about the Mets is their team batting average finished at .253 and their ERA at .327. The batting average actually dropped slightly and the ERA slightly rose in the World Series, even though they beat the Tigers 4-1. So, let's look and see how it did happen. And when you go to the pitching, Jon Matlack jumps off the page here. His rookie 72 card, he was Rookie of the Year. And during the preseason, off-season, winter review and anticipating the draft, knowing that Matlack would win that 72 Rookie of the Year and going, I bet you putting him with Seaver and Kuzman on 1969, they can win the World Series. Well, I nailed that, but I didn't have him being the ace. And speaking of that, Don Cardwell was the starter in Game 5, gave us 5 innings, qualified, and got that win to finish 3-1. One of the other things it did with Cardwell is that it lowered his ERA, and by lowering his ERA, and by the fact that Tom Seaver got knocked around in Game 2, it means that Tom Seaver, the 1969 Tom Seaver card, had the worst ERA on the team, and was 7-6 on the world champion Mets. Mets have to feel good about that because the Seaver card, as we'll see when we get into the rest of the video, will actually get better. And the Mets have a really good chance, very good chance, of getting back to repeat next year or in the next 4 years. Because Seaver, Kuzman, and Matlack aren't going anywhere. And if you combine that with Tub McGraw, we just showed you what can happen. And they won a World Series with it. Sayakasa got a win in one of those games, in Game 1. And he was brought in to be the righty who slams the door on right-handed hitters. .04 ERA, 81-cent whip. And then you had Frisella, a righty who gets lefties out. 282.99 whip. So the three big guns in the bullpen did exactly what they needed to do. The starting pitching did what it needed to do. And then we go to the hitting. So Cleon Jones named the World Series MVP. He was an all-star. He hit .340 in 69. We said this is the last chance that Cleon's going to hit with that card. He's never going to hit .340 again. But he slightly overachieved by hitting .352 with that particular card. 9 homer, 35 RBI on a very surprisingly potent Met offense. And there's a reasonable chance that it'll be as potent moving forward. Obviously, Cleon won't be as potent. Ken Singleton's 1970 card overachieved. It hit .263, so he overachieved by 50 points. Didn't have power against lefties, didn't hit a homer against lefties, but he had plenty against righties, so him and Cleon would flip between third and fourth versus lefties and righties. That was a great combo in the middle of that lineup. Clint Dennon got the everyday duty at first base or DH, where he would not have been able to play because the pitchers bat in the National League. So he didn't have to platoon with Ed Kranepool. He got a full-time gig, and he performed by leading the club in homer. Tommy A.G., his glove, his arm, and some speed was what they needed more than the batting average. A couple years with Tommy A.G., the batting average has not been there, .258. Grody's card is .252 card, it's .250. But no bigger hit was a 9th inning home run in Game 4 off Joe Coleman. Joe Foy, interesting player. Plays anywhere in the infield and outfield. Super utility guy. Would be playing for the Kansas City Royals and Mets during this era. He actually just locked in at third base the whole year because they needed a third baseman. His batting average isn't there. His own base is good. Look at the 15 stolen bases. He did it 5 homers and 9 doubles. He was a fun card to have for this team. The rest of the offense had some misses. Bud Harrelson's 180 at-bats at 178. He did have 8 stolen bases, though. So that helps. But his defense is all they really wanted. He was like the 9th pitcher on this team. He's a 1E17, and that really helps. If you got a dominant rotation of bullpen, you want to get yourself a 1 at short if you can. That will take you out of a lot of jams with a nice double play. Wayne Garrett and Ed Kranepool both had lousy years. Kranepool had a homer in the World Series, though, one of his 2. As Jerry Grody, one of his 2 was in the World Series. So it was a fun year for the Mets. Let's take a look now at their stack to decide how does this team go about the daunting process of repeating as world champions. We know, we'll look at the history, that they kind of just play mediocre baseball for a number of years, even though they get to a World Series and a playoffs. Let's pull their 69 guys out first. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, and we have the correct number of 69 guys to fully resolve now the league. And you're going to see some good players here they got to make some tough decisions about. Okay, it's going to be a full house, trying to figure out who comes back and who has to be either traded or passed through waivers. That's going to be tough. And they're going to bring back, you would hope, mostly pitching. But it's the perfect split of 7 and 5. So, they don't have a catcher currently on the roster. That can change. Singleton played a lot of DH with this card, the 70 card, first year in the league. You've got Kranepool, platoon first base. Frank Johnson, he was actually defense in right field for Singleton and could play first base. They wanted to find the best defensive outfielder they could find, and it was a 3E7. They couldn't find anything better than that, so that's why they took Frank Johnson. Here's Clint Dennon, platooning with Kranepool at first base. Garrett can play second and third, and Heiss is Garrett's caddy against lefties. Here. And there's, of course, Bud Harrelson. So, a 1E17 at short. So, as far as the pitching goes, well, the youngster, of course, his first year, 1972, 15 and 10, Rookie of the Year in the National League. This was the biggest dividend of the World Series. This is the guy here who made it happen. Matlack was magnificent. If he's not magnificent, the Mets don't win the World Series. Now, your bullpen comes back. That's fantastic news. Zepp is just the 8th pitcher. Basically, the Mets just kept a vacant spot for the end of the draft for that 8th pitcher. And Zepp was the best of the available guys. And look at him. He's actually good. 9 and 4, 322 for a Minnesota Twins team that's probably wondering, how do we let this guy get away? I don't anticipate a long career for this guy, but the big three, and the big three, you'll notice this color scheme is for the 71 and 72 players. They'll be around in that bullpen. Any mistakes that Kuzman, Seaver, and Matlack make, these guys are cover up. You got the righty who gets the lefties out, you get the righty who gets the righties out, and you got McGraw, who, even though he puts a ton of left-handed hitters on, the good news is no home runs to lefties. So that's key if you're going to have this kind of on base at 22%. So that's a look at the Mets. And now the hard job of figuring out what to do with the 69 Miracle Mets players whose cards are going away and have to be replaced with future cards. Okay, what do the 69 Mets do in an attempt to repeat as world champs? Well, guess what, folks? I matched history up. 4-1 over the American League East team. It's just that it was the Tigers and not the Orioles. That's the only difference. Won the World Series 4-1. Now, this is kind of an interesting New York story going on here. They don't top 83 wins in the next 4 years. But you know who else didn't? The New York Yankees. It's really weird, the mirror overall record the two teams had. 81 or 82 wins for the New York Yankees will put you in 4th place behind the 100-win Oriole team. 82 wins for the Mets get you all the way to the World Series. So the 3rd place finishes, you're behind the Pirates. And then, yeah. So 83, 83, 83, and 82. A lot of mediocrity. Their best pitcher is Seaver. Now, again, I mentioned he struggled, but it's something you shouldn't worry about. Because I know he won a lot of games in 69, but the Mets won a lot of games in 69. So his win total, very high, is not as important as this number here, this WAR. And you see 71, and oh my goodness, 73. So, the future of Tom Seaver only gets better after a disappointing performance this year in the World Series. So let's now take a look at the New York Mets hitters. And folks, it's going to be, you're not going to be able to keep everybody. This is the problem all your champions have. And teams like to hold on to their stars and run it back, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Okay, the first guy is Tommy A.G. Now, your center fielder is a 1 with a -3 arm. I don't want him to ever go away. Give me a 1 -3 in center field, you're on my team. I don't care if you hit 210. So let's see. And there he is. He's got 6 MVP votes in 70, 19 MVP votes, and just as a formality to give him a Gold Glove. I guess there's a lot of great center fielders defensively in the National League in 69 because he did not get a Gold Glove with that performance defensively. No-brainer. No-brainer for AG. Have to keep him. This could get really tough here for the Mets. And they might have to make some trades or something. It's going to... I just fear they're not going to be able to keep this whole thing together. The year for AG, as you see, he plays through 72, and then in 73, hang on a second here, in 73, he splits time with Houston and St. Louis. But the 70 and the 71 cards warrant keeping him, particularly because of that Gold Glove. That Gold Glove is going to help the pitchers. So that's why he's definitely a keeper. All right, next one, another no-brainer for not being retained, though, is Pat Corrales, the manager who was a hitter and got a World Series ring. He participated with the Cincinnati Reds in 69. Just curiosity's sake, I wonder if he got... Oh, look, he just missed the Cardinals World Series. And on those Reds... Oh, look at that, 70... Well, he would have played in the 70 World Series, perhaps. Anyway... Does he qualify for waivers in 1970? With 115 plate appearances for the Reds. To do that, we'll have to look at the roster sheet for the Reds in 70. And I go to this superds.tripod.com/SOM rosters. And I got the 1971 brought up here. I want to take a peek at the Cincinnati Reds for the purpose of seeing if I can give this guy waivers so he can see work elsewhere. And he does. He backs up Johnny Bench. So congratulations, Pat Corrales. You do not have to retire. You can go on waivers. Next up, Joe Foy. And that was another smart pick. They didn't even need his versatility, which was pretty cool. For the Mets, they had versatile players like Al Weiss and Swoboda and Shamsky and... I want to say Gasper. But they also had Foy with a Red Sox hat here. Started with Boston. Then it was a year in Kansas City, the Mets, and Washington. And it never really blossomed. We actually used the 69 Kansas City Royal card in the league this year. Look at the number of at-bats. Because he stole bases, he was versatile, could play all over the place. That's the card we used. He's actually on the Mets in 70, and they made his card. But unfortunately, he's probably being called to the front office and saying, "Hey, we know you just helped us win a World Series, but we don't have enough money for everybody and enough spots for everybody." So I'm thinking that Mr. Joe Foy will have to be put on waivers. So that's kind of a tough one. He's a fun guy, and that opens up a hole at third base on this team. So Foy's on waivers. Now, if for some reason they can't find more keepers, which I seriously doubt that happening. I can think of 3 more off the top of my head here. They could bring Foy back. It's not looking good, folks. They're going to have to make a decision here on some of these guys. Okay, so the next guy is Grody. We know he'll play for the Mets all the way through the decade. His arm, the -3 arm, is what shut down the track meet against the Dodgers. And his arm shut down the speedy Giant players like Bonds and Ken Anderson. And he hit that homer in the 9th inning. And has an All-Star game appearance in '68. We know the bat's not going to be there. Does hit 270 and 71 for the Mets. Frankly, you know, it's a mere formality. He actually has 2 good bat years, 71 and 73. If for some reason they can't keep Grody, someone else is going to pick him up. There's no way that the Mets are going to get him. And then they got to find a catcher, which is hard to do. So they're going to keep Grody, of course. But it's going to make it difficult moving forward. Next guy is Cleon Jones, and this is super critical here. Talk about selling high. So Cleon is your World Series MVP. He was your All-Star. He hit .352 with a card that hit .340 in 1969. Was his only All-Star appearance. Whew, man, he still delivers though, doesn't he? He still brings the mail to New York. Look at this. He delivers the mail fine. 856 OPS and 71. That is a huge year at age 28. And he's on the Mets all the way through to 74, 75. Well, it's not going to work out, folks. So yeah, they'll keep him. Or at least for now they will, but they're probably looking for a trade partner because it's 71. 71, a .319 hitting Cleon Jones might be on the trade block because he'd be the 3rd keeper, and we have Seaver Kuzman coming up soon. So, oh boy. Good problem to have, though it's a bad problem if you have to say goodbye to one of your best players. All right, let's do pitching, but I'm going to switch the order. I'm going to start with Don Cardwell. He was the winning pitcher of the World Series we just played, Game 4. And he really fell off a cliff from 69 into 70. So in 70, he was terrible with the Mets and Braves in 48 innings. I'm just going to retire him. There's no sense putting him through waivers. Because no one's going to claim him when you have an ERA over 7. So, unfortunately for Cardwell, he has to retire. But, what a great way to retire, though, with a World Series ring. We can also, anything else we can mention about him? He also was a 13-game winner, 15-game winner. But he really was his best years were with the Mets in 68 and 69. So, congratulations, Cardwell, on getting that ring. All right, let's do Kuzman first. We'll save the best for last. So Kuzman, of course, is a keeper. No-brainer. I believe his number was retired this year. I don't know why it took him so long. And he's with them all the way through 79, 78. This 20 loss card of 77 is in my league because it's an outstanding card. The 20 losses is other dysfunction for that particular era Met team. 76, he wins 21 games. So here we are. You can run him back next year on the rotation at a $1.22 whip. You could give him that 4-year contract from 73 at a $1.17 whip. The other 2 years in between, he doesn't go on the rotation. There's plenty of time to think this out. I'm not going to put this... he just got his number retired by the Mets. I'm not going to actually entertain trade options for him. So Koosman is a keeper, and any year will probably be good. And finally, here it is. This is the 5th keeper, which is a problem for the Mets. Somebody has to go. Not this guy. So Seaver... Interesting. Let's take a look at the wonderfully long career of Tom Seaver, arguably the greatest pitcher in the 4-year carryover league history, because he does it for a decade and a half. I kind of want to show you all the cards that Seaver can be used for. Now, obviously, it starts here in 69, because again I don't have the 67 and 68 cards. So the 25 wins, you have to kind of understand that everything kind of went perfectly. But statistically, he's just as good in any of these years, if not better. But when you pick which year from 70, 71, 72, and 73, I always like to scan over to whip. And he leads the league in whip in 71 and in 73. So you have 2 years to choose from. And of course he goes in the rotation during this time every year. So let's just kind of go through this man's career in the carryover league. So let's say you bump him up to 73. So you have that card for 4 years. Let's continue the logic here. So you have that card in 73, 74, 75, and 76. And then at that point, it's time for a new Seaver card. So you could go right to the 77, trade with the Reds, and move him over to the Reds. Or you could say, well, let's max out his Met tenure, give him a 3-year deal with the Mets through 76, another great card. And then for some reason from 77, when he does go to the Reds, and give him a Reds career with this sparkling card, then when that card is up, 4 years later, is 1981. And what happens in 81? Oh boy, yeah. That year of the strike, goes in the rotation with a $1.11 whip. And then keeping on, carrying on, 81, 82, 83, 84. You could go to his White Sox tenure with a nice year, 3.17 ERA. So he will be in baseball longer than any other pitcher in this era in the carryover league. He's a lifetime carryover league participant. So he's going to run at least 8 years with the Mets, possibly 10 years before he starts his Cincinnati tenure here. And then probably give it 6 more years with the Reds. And again, I've already used the Seaver card. You know, I started this project with the 77 season, and he was on the Reds, and I ran his Red tenure through, and then I, of course, went back to 69 because I finally got these card sets and started up here. So, lifetime best pitcher in carryover league history, Tom Seaver, of course, is a keeper here. And after how he pitched in a disappointing fashion, and they won the World Series 4-1. So the Mets have a happy problem. They've got 5 keepers, which means they're going to trade one of these guys to a team that is going to fork up a lot. If I had to guess, I'm thinking it's Cleon Jones is the guy they have to let go, which seems like a huge mistake. But AG is a 1 in center field through 70. Cleon's only good through 71. Of course, Grody, you need his defense and an arm, and of course he plays for the Mets the entire era. And of course, Seaver Koosman. So, if it comes down to these 2 guys, AG and Cleon Jones, it sounds, based on their 69 performance, it would be Cleon, but looking forward, I'd rather have the center fielder. Assuming AG is still playing center field and is a 1, I'd rather have him. than Cleon Jones if I had to give one of these guys away. And if you wanted to keep the bats and let the catcher go, good luck finding a -3 or a -4 arm catcher, because you want the, if you have all these great pitchers, you need to have a great catcher to prevent teams getting bloop singles and stealing bases and going first and third and hitting and running, because every time you do that, it means that the pitchers aren't pitching. The other team is using those strategy maneuvers to advance runners. So you need to have an anchor at catcher, just like the Cincinnati Reds have Johnny Bench. You don't have Bench's bat, but you have Grody's arm. So you want Grody to be throwing base runners out. I doubt there's another catcher in the Met pipeline. John Stearns, he certainly didn't have an arm, and he didn't come around to the mid-late 70s. So Grody is a no-brainer, I think. And it looks like, in a stunning move, the world champs are going to passively put Cleon Jones on the trade block. And hopefully a team will offer the sun, moon, and the stars, and possibly a third baseman would be nice. Any team with an extra third baseman and who wants Cleon Jones, call the Mets. Alright, that's it for the elimination videos. When we look at the total league now, we've done eliminations for everybody. And here is the formula of all the keepers, waivers, and retires. This is a value. The way you interpret this number, which is 1,325,767, this value, is to draw a line after the first 3 digits and then a line after the next 2 digits. And if you do that, the first 3 digits is 132. That's how many keepers are in our league. We need to get down to 128. So 4 of those keepers will probably move into waivers. There's 57 waivered guys, plus 4 of those keepers makes it 61. And then 3 retired players have to move into waivers. That's 67, you reduce that by 3 to get to the proper math of 128, 64, 64. So the hard part is I got to identify 3 retired guys to see if they still have a strat card and kick them into waivers. And if I don't, I've got to make an addendum to this particular. This could be an ongoing problem of having too many guys retire because the talent pool is so small. There's only 24 baseball teams, and I'm trying to put it into 32. So the first thing I'll have to do is find 3 retired players who actually have a Strat-O-Matic card and move them into waivers. That's it tonight. The end of the eliminations. Hope you've been enjoying this interpretation of how I advance my carryover league teams. Thanks for checking it out. We'll see you next time.